Welcome to Motherhood Unstressed, a podcast for anyone who wants to let go of stress and anxiety and learn how to be more fully present in life. Each week, I'm speaking with experts in the fields of entrepreneurship, nutrition, mindset, sex, spirituality, and so much more. I'm your host, Liz Carlisle. I'm a writer, a speaker, and an entrepreneur. Through my own struggle to balance the demands of motherhood and life, I discovered that to truly be happy, we need to be present. Your journey to feeling less stressed and more blissfully present in your own life starts right now. What if you didn't have to work a 9 to 5? What if you didn't have to work until you were 70 years old? What if there was another way? My guest today is Scott Rieckens. He's a documentary filmmaker and author, and he is here to share his story about how he and his wife decided to take a different path than what most Americans are doing and live a life on their own terms, to create a life where their priorities aligned with what they were doing with their lives and their time and their money and everything. His film is called Playing with Fire, and so is the book. And it's all about their journey, and he interviews amazing people from across the country on this topic. And in doing so, it shows you exactly how you could do it too. It shows you that it's actually a possibility. It's not some far-fetched thing, some impossible feat. It's actually really simple. You just have to be disciplined and rewire how you've been brought up and how you've been conditioned as a consumer in America. So I hope you find this insanely interesting and really helpful and valuable. And who knows, maybe you can start incorporating elements of the FIRE movement, as they call it, into your own life and see what happens. This episode is sponsored by Motherhood Unstressed CBD. You can get yours at motherhoodunstressed.com or in stores across the country. And if stores in your neighborhood don't have it yet, simply have them reach out to me and we can get it out to you ASAP. Well, hello, Scott. Welcome to the Motherhood Unstressed podcast. I'm so glad you're here. It was so nice chatting with you before this. And I'm just really excited to bring your story and bring your point of view on life and the world and money to my audience on a greater scale. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. And thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. So before we get started, I always like to start in the regular way, just having you give a little bit of your origin story and how it led you to being an author and a documentary filmmaker on the issue of financial independence.
Yeah, so I was driving down the street one day, and my life was very interesting. My wife and I had kind of thought we had designed our lives the way we wanted to live them, and we were living in a high cost of living area just outside of San Diego, and we were busting our butts to try to get promotions and increase our income and live that that lifestyle that we thought we needed to be living, vacations and nice things and all that. And after a while, and especially when we had our baby, I started to feel like things weren't quite in hand. We weren't quite paycheck to paycheck, but we were darn close. And for how hard we were working and how stressed out we were, that didn't seem like the right place to be. And it felt sort of irresponsible, and especially when we had our child, because now you can't be selfish and just kind of take risks and do those things as much when you have somebody relying on you. So my thought was, and my wife, she also was really struck by motherhood and was questioning whether she wanted to work as hard as she was working, and that stressed me out even more because she's a high earner, she's an amazing, accomplished career woman, and it was not going to work if she wanted to step back, not where we were living.
Right.
And so I wanted to provide that for her. And I felt a visceral need to provide that for her. And, not because she would need it. She's good on her own, but she was kind of asking for it. And I couldn't provide that. And it was rough. That was stressful. And so, as an entrepreneur for the last 10 years, my first thought is increase my income. How can I do it? Where's my $1 million idea? What should I do next? And, that's a big burden to put on anyone, I think, is, trying to come up with that life-changing idea that's going to really elevate and change the game. And, but that's all I knew. And so I went on to podcasts and blogs and all kinds of things, trying to figure out how to increase my income. So part of that journey was I was listening to a Tim Ferriss podcast. He's got the 4-Hour Workweek book, and his podcast is full of amazing innovators. And I thought maybe I'd find my inspiration there. And I'm driving to work and I hear Mr. Money Mustache come on the show. And I had about a 20-minute commute to work, and Started listening to him talk about his lifestyle and what he did. And the thing that really hit me was he was talking about how your savings rate is like almighty. It is so powerful. And he started describing why. And I was so struck by that because I suddenly realized here I am trying to increase my income. But what if I, take on this thing that I have power to control right now, which is my savings rate? That's interesting. I don't know how that works or anything, but okay, that kind of resonates with me because that's an alternative to this other problem or this other thing I'm trying to fix or figure out that I am having trouble doing. And so I was driving to work and I came up with an excuse to be late, and I pulled over the side of the road and listened to the whole thing. And it just really hit home. I mean, it was like, okay, now I kind of understand generally how this works. And oh my gosh, it's in my control and I can do something about it right now. This is pretty unbelievable. Mm-hmm. So I ran home and I'll never forget that feeling. I was just so giddy, to get home and dive into his blog. And, one article led to another article led to 4:00 in the morning. I'm still up reading the iPad and couldn't put it down. And that took me down the rabbit hole as well of this whole FIRE movement and the people that are in it and all of the amazing tacticians and strategists and the community surrounding it and how the whole thing works. I soaked it up, and I'm not a math person by trade or by interest. I don't.
Neither am I.
Okay, spreadsheets aren't my jam.
Right.
But living a more intentional and a less stressed life certainly is. And that's what this provided. And if I have to do a little math to figure that out, I was down for the challenge. The cool thing that I figured out, though, is that it's actually really simple. It doesn't make it easy, but it's simple. It's something anyone, I think, can understand. The framework is very approachable. But it's difficult. It's a heck of a challenge. I mean, there's no prescribed savings rate that you have to hit, mm-hmm. but I think the FIRE movement sort of prescribes a 50% or better. And wow. I think that's okay. I think it's okay because I understand how hard it is to achieve, but the idea is that you are challenged to do your best to get there. And it is achievable. And you see people that are hitting 50% or higher savings rates all the time in the FIRE movement. And what's wonderful about that is they're leading by example. They're showing that it works. And oftentimes they're sharing their life journey with us, with the audience, through their blogs or what have you, and or their podcasts. I've met them now in person and spent a lot of time with them and call many of them dear friends. And I can tell you firsthand that they're living a very, very happy life. And those that came from sort of the more stressed, crazy lifestyle and into the FIRE movement, like myself, can say with absolute surety that it's one heck of a great way to approach life. So for me, that was that's where I found it. That's kind of how my story evolved with the FIRE movement. And when I was doing the rabbit hole thing and soaking up all the content and everything, the one glaringly obvious omission was video. And as a video producer, that was annoying to me because I wanted to see these people and I wanted to soak it up in my medium. But it was also sort of like, all of a sudden I had my $1 million idea, and I already have the $1 million idea, which is this amazing framework known as FIRE that I can apply to my life and get what I want out of my life now. But now I have this really incredible, purposeful idea that doesn't necessitate a specific amount of profit or income. It's just something I want to spend my time doing. I'm scratching my own itch. So I thought, man, I'd love to maybe make a YouTube series or maybe a TV series or maybe a documentary. And I started going through that and eventually landed on, I think I'm going to make a documentary about this. And I've always kind of wanted to make a full feature doc, and what an incredible story to tell. And my wife and I are actually thinking about doing this, and I'm trying to convince her as we speak. And I think that's really compelling because I'm sure a lot of people are going to have to go through that. And maybe I should just turn the cameras on and see what happens. And in the meantime, go out and meet, and this will be an excuse for me to go meet my newfound heroes, because that's something that I immediately wanted and didn't, see a way to have happen. It's not like there's a convention where you can just go meet everybody all at once. maybe there's a little bit with FinCon, but at the time I didn't know that.
Right.
And so I'm like, how do I get to meet these people? I feel like I know them. I want to tell them, and share with them how much they've changed my life. You go through all those feelings. And so I thought this was like a really fun way to scratch that itch too. So, but ultimately it all evolved into this idea of, if we can share our story, the ups, the downs, the hardships, the successes, and if we can put that into formats that work really well for people, then maybe we can help them find this framework, just like I did. I started feeling really strongly like I wanted to pay it forward, because I still can't really put it into words, like how life-changing this framework was for us. Just refocusing our life on what's most important, getting aligned together as a couple, and getting more out of life, and being less stressed on a daily basis, and knowing that there's more to all of this. And, it's just this huge revelation, and it's become this amazing thing as well, where our friends and our family are starting to sort of, be caught up a little bit in it, sort of leading by example kind of thing.
Right.
They were originally very skeptical, asking us if we had joined a cult, kind of pushing back in weird ways, like that you see very quickly are sort of more self-reflective and
Right. As
and
always.
full of guilt and full of all kinds of weird things that, which is really interesting, because I'm talking about my family here, my family and my dear friends. And it's like, why am I suddenly seeing this now? Or why don't we talk about this more? And so, one of the things that I have learned through this journey is that, I think fundamentally, as a whole, our society has a really broken relationship with money. And Taylor and I were right there. I mean, we had a completely broken relationship. We didn't know our ass from our end, as my dad would say. It was, and through this process, we've learned a lot about where the education that we did have came from, how we saw money and why we saw money, the way we did, all sort of revealed itself through this journey. And also, I think once you come out on the other end, you sort of become a bit enlightened to how the whole thing works, and you feel a little more empowered with how the whole thing works. And it's pretty amazing, because you can also kind of see through things, and you see people, and you see where they are, and they don't have to say much, and you kind of already know, you know what I mean? And what's been so rewarding about that, and so fantastic about that, is, we recently moved to a lower cost of living area to try to I don't know, maybe living in a place that's more aligned with what we wanted, slow down a little bit, and all the rest of it. And so when we did that, one of the things that we decided to do, because one of the things about the FIRE framework is, it sort of forces you to become very intentional about just about every decision you make, because almost every decision you make can probably be traced back to money, right? Or at least a significant majority of them. So you start gaining that habit, and it starts to pervade around the rest of your life.
Do you feel nervous talking to people about this kind of lifestyle, because it is so opposite of, consumerist America?
I mean, in the early days, we had a lot of struggles with it. Yeah. And I think a lot of people do, because, there's a couple of reasons. One is it's not natural in society today to, be talking about finances, especially personal finance, with just anyone. And then the other side of it is as I was saying, this idea that, we have a broken relationship with money as a society. I mean, 70% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. They don't have $400 to put together in the case of an emergency. It's an epidemic. It's insane. And the good news is there's a very quick and obvious fix to this. It's going away from consumerism. It's living more intentionally, and it's, realigning yourself. But I don't think enough people have even the basic education. I mean, I didn't think about that on a daily basis. Our lives are bombarded by advertisements and keeping up with the Joneses. Our friends are they're doing this and they're doing that. Maybe I should be doing this or that. And our lives are insanely busy. And, there's so many things that come at you, and a lot of them cost money. And so you just, I think, as far as I just felt like I was trying to keep up.
Yeah.
And And so
it really wasn't until your wife said, hey, I want to be a stay-at-home mom and spend more time with our child, that you even saw a different way. Is that right?
yeah, I mean, and I just got so lucky that right around that time, because I was trying to find something, that I found this. And, and what I was getting at was that, when people have this broken relationship with money, there's a lot of guilt. There's a lot of negative feelings around that. And so if you do bring up this whole thing about retiring early, people start getting all kind of like, I don't know, but what are you talking about? Like, what is this thing that sounds crazy. Like, come on, that's not the way we're, and it becomes difficult. It can become difficult to talk about. Since I've been talking about it for 2 years and gone through all of that, I think we've gotten a lot better at it. We've trained ourselves to know which buttons to avoid, which things to say. And we are finding ourselves getting better at it. And getting back to what I was saying about our friends is, the friends that we have made have been curious about this. And so we've gotten better at talking about it as we've moved here. And it's just incredible to how quickly how quickly our new friends have opened up to us about very personal details about their finances. And I think a big reason why that happens is, one is I think they feel an inherent trust with us, because they see that we kind of have our shit together, to be honest. And the other side of it is I think the way we speak about it is with a ton of empathy. We come at it with no judgment as best as we can. And we constantly reinforce that this whole thing that I'm talking about, this whole thing that we're talking about, this FIRE stuff, it's all very flexible. Mm-hmm. There are no fast and hard rules. And we just hope that, as many people as possible can learn about it. And we've got a whole community here to help you along the way. And you can take and cherry pick whatever you want. You don't have to be a full-fledged FIRE member. There is no badge. There's nothing that exists. There's no college you can go through, just a thing out there right now. And I think it's in the zeitgeist, and I'm just really, I'm blessed, and I'm so happy that I can be a part of that conversation and getting the FIRE framework out to as many people as possible.
That's so amazing. And I love that you're saying, like, it's out there now. And with the documentary that you filmed, that's coming out very shortly, I mean, I think it's going to be out there even more so. And there's going to be an even stronger movement, because this is something that so many people need. So many people, like you said, are stressed out. They're living paycheck to paycheck. They're not happy, and they keep spending because they don't know any different. And so all of a sudden, wait a second, there is a different way. So for our listeners, I mean, what would be the first step for moving towards financial independence? They're just now hearing about it maybe, and they want to make a change.
Yeah, well, if you're first hearing about it just now, congratulations. And I'm so happy you're listening. And I would say the number one step is to make sure you remember not to be overwhelmed by all of it. Know that you will get to the finish line of understanding it and deciding on how you want to kind of take it into your life. And I would say number one action item is to go home, and, if you're single, go home and do this. If you have a spouse or a significant other, try to do this exercise with them. Maybe separate at first, but come together and discuss it. But we recommend writing down a list of happiness. And what we liked to do was write down the top 5 or 10 things that make you happiest on a weekly basis, that bring you joy on a weekly basis. And the reason why we do a week is because we feel like a day is sort of, it's too specific, it's too detailed. There's too many things that just have to get done. And you may not have, a very long list in one day of the things that bring you happiness. I think a month or even, or longer is a little bit too ethereal. You might start talking about vacations and, that kind of stuff. And you don't want to get there. But a week, I feel like everybody speaks about their lives in sort of like a week, like, what's the weather like this week? Like, where are we, what do we have to get done this week? Like, what's your week look like? There's a lot of that going on. So I think it's a nice framework to say, okay, on a weekly basis, if I can generally do things that make me happy, that's achievable. That's something that's easy to kind of wrap your mind around. And so that's why we do a week. And I think that works really nicely. So yeah, just writing down the things that make you happy. And the reason why you want to do that is what you're really doing here. If you have to break down the FIRE movement, it's aligning your values with your spending. because everybody has to spend money to live. The beautiful thing about the FIRE movement is not only are you aligning your values with your spending, but you're also getting an education on investing, which is the fun early retirement part, which, at the end of the day, it's not about retiring for the sake of sitting on a beach and doing nothing for the rest of your life. My hope is that you're creative enough to come up with all kinds of ideas. But if you're struggling with that, then that can be a real thing. One thing you got to consider is that what we're doing is we're aligning our values with our spending, right? So that we can free up more of our mental space to go out and really experiment with the things that are going to bring you joy. And you may not have had enough time to even do that. Because I know I didn't. I mean, I was so stressed and feeling like I was just trying to keep up that, that's not a good place to be. I mean, I was still coming up with ideas and, I'd love to go do this. I'd love to go do that. But do you have the time? Well, you certainly don't feel like you have the time. And so that's kind of the way, you're trying to head. And I've met so many people that have reached financial independence in the last couple of years. And I think I maybe know one person who is like straight up retired, not doing anything. And that's what they say. And I still don't agree. I mean, I still see them writing on a blog or doing something, contributing to society in some way, shape, or form. So I think it's just a matter of retiring from mandatory labor. And I think that's a distinction I'll continue to speak about for a really long time, because people get really caught up with this whole early retirement thing. But I just see that as the first line of excuses that you're going to make for why this may or may not work. At the end of the day, there's just nothing you can poke a hole at when you say, if you spend less than you earn and you use the rest to invest wisely, you can't really lose. At the very least, it's a better framework than no strategy.
Right. So why do you think so many people don't already realize this, or they're not, they're not putting it into practice? What do you think is the disconnect there? Because everyone would want to not have to go to a 9-to-5 job and be stressed out 24/7. I mean, why aren't people doing this?
Yeah. I think, I got a bunch of answers to that. So first of all, like the whole 9-to-5 thing, just to be very clear, if you do start on this FIRE path, there's a very high likelihood, depending on where you're at, but based on where most people are at, based on statistics, you're going to have a decade or so ahead of you of continuing this practice before you're going to just be able to leave the 9-to-5, let's say. Mm-hmm. But one thing that's really wonderful about all of this is that I've noticed, it's anecdotal. I don't think we have any evidence of it, but a lot of people that I've talked to will say that the minute I found this FIRE thing and I started implementing this in my life, and I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck any longer, I was not making decisions based off of fear any longer. And what a lot of people find is that they just end up realizing that, hey, I don't actually mind this job. I actually like this job. Maybe I'll lean into this job more. Or they'll find that this job is actually bringing them unhappiness because they're being more intentional. But now they have the flexibility to look around and say, where else can I provide value? Where else can I find value? Where else can I be happy? What else can I do? And some people will even get to the point where you can take a sabbatical. Maybe you save up instead of to invest and to eventually retire. Maybe you save up just to take some time for yourself to figure out what you want to do. A lot of us go through this prescribed, life decision tree, which is basically like you get out of high school. If you're lucky enough, you go to a higher institution. If not, you're going right into the workforce. Either way, you're like 18 to 22 and you have no idea of how the world works or who you are as a human being. All of a sudden you're in your 30s and you're like, shoot, these weren't decisions that I made for myself. These were decisions out of necessity. So that in and of itself should be enough incentive for people to be curious. Why people haven't found out about it up until now, why people aren't doing this already. I mean, I would say number one is the lack of education. I mean, and I speak to that in the way that, in a furious way, and something that I'm going to hopefully make my life's work if any of this stuff goes well and allows me to continue to work on this, is how on earth are we learning trigonometry or statistics as a senior in high school and not being taught personal finance? Why isn't that a prerequisite? It makes no sense. Makes no sense. And I've got a bunch of fun conspiracy theories on why that's the case, and and we don't need to get into that right now, but at the end of the day, it is absolute tragedy that that's not the case. And then it doesn't happen in college either. And, that I'm aware of, there's like one fire course that I'm aware of actually at my alma mater, the University of Iowa. And we're going to work to fix that as well, because at the end of the day, you can't expect people to intuitively know this stuff.
Right.
What I have found is a lot of people that are already in the fire movement, a lot of them were naturally frugal to begin with. They were sort of naturally people who were drawn to saving, or were just flat out naturally curious people and really questioned their surroundings at all times, which is what I love about
So they're either questioners or they're rebels. I love that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And sometimes in the form of sort of like a math sort of engineering sort of nerdy kind of person. So it's an amazing, array, but that's more of the stigma, or it's a stigma that's been put on the fire movement that needs to move away, because I've met so many different people. I mean, all walks of life, all different income levels, all different jobs, all different ages. And that's been so much fun. And in the documentary that we made, I think you'll see that there's a wide array of diversity, men, women, all different types of nationalities and origins and upbringings and ages, who have proven this out, who have a lot to say about it.
Well, talk to us about the documentary. Like, what exactly is it about? Take us through. I mean, I already know all this because I love your book. But talk to us about the documentary and who it's really for. Who's going to benefit from seeing this?
Yeah. So the documentary it chronicles Taylor and I's journey through the first year of taking the leap, deciding to adjust our lives and essentially commit to being a member of the fire community, right? Or the fire framework, using the fire framework for our lives. And as you watch us progress through that journey, you get to meet many of the fire influencers who influenced us and influenced millions of others to sort of, take the challenge on. And so you learn from them sort of the tactics and strategies, tips and ideas that we use as we go along. You learn it from them and you see us learning from them. And those were real things. Like, those were real scenes. Like we literally went down, went to these various places, sat down with these people and learned from them. And it was always so incredible to be, getting that sort of feedback at that time. It was very real.
Wow.
Taylor and I learned more about ourselves and our family when the cameras were on than when they were off. And I totally didn't expect that. I thought we would have to sort of semi-act this out. And this is our first time in front of the camera.
I love you, honey.
Yeah, exactly. And this was obviously Taylor's first time in front of the camera and mine as well. I'd been behind the camera the whole time. And so, my perception was that we would be kind of acting it out. And instead, some of the most incredible moments that have completely transformed the way I see the world happened when the cameras were rolling. So that's kind of what you're going to get. I can't speak too much more about,
Yeah.
But,
when are you coming out?
Well, we will be announcing today. Actually, I'm sure you're not going to be putting this podcast out today, but today we'll be sharing with everyone that, we will be announcing in mid-April, the theater tour. And so at that moment of announcement around mid-April, people will be able to go on this site called Tug. And I'll be sharing all of this through our platform as well.
Yeah, I'll be in the show notes too.
Yeah, thank you. Playingwithfire.co. But you can go there, you can go to Tug, and you can become an admin in your local area. Or you can find out that somebody's already done that, and then you can purchase a ticket. But the admins will help us select a theater, select a date and time, which is all set up through the Tug. It's very easy to do on Tug, on the platform. It's basically cinema on demand. And so what we're doing is we're pre-selling tickets for people to be able to bring the film to their local area. So it's a really cool way for us to have the film shown in theaters, which is by far and away the best place to see it. I almost get hives thinking about sending the link to all the Kickstarter backers early because they're going to be watching on their computers, in different places. And it's like, oh gosh, because we really went for it with this movie. We shot with really nice cameras, and it's
it's going to be on Netflix before too long. I already know.
Oh, well, thank you. Keep putting those good vibes out. A lot of people think that's that's just going to happen.
Yeah.
And I'm always telling them, like, no, you have to get a licensing deal. They will want to. They need to want your film on the platform. So hopefully we get there. We've actually been in talks with them, and we hope it goes well. So. Because ultimately we would just want to get in front of as many eyeballs as possible, but we didn't want to deprive ourselves of a theater tour because that's going to be super fun.
It's fun. Yeah.
It's fun. Yeah. It's a good way to get the community involved, get people out, get people together. Taylor and I, and hopefully some of the cast members are going to do our best to get out and introduce the film in various locations, do Q&As, throw a party afterwards. And just get some buzz going on it. But we're really hoping to just reach people, meet them where they are, teach them a little bit about fire, and entertain them, inspire them to look into this further. That's ultimately our goal. We're not, the movie isn't going to give you all of the step-by-step ways that you're going to take this fire thing on and suddenly retire early. It's an inspirational story about a couple who's hopefully relatable to the wide majority of people, because I think we all have a very shared experience in this world in a lot of ways, and in other ways we don't, and we acknowledge that. And again, it's just a matter of, look, at the end of the day, this is all about, the whole thing is technically all about math, and the math doesn't lie, and the math doesn't care what you look like or who you are or where you came from. And the situation that you're in, is going to be unique to you. And my hope is just that you at least have the ability to take this framework and use it as best you can in your own experience.
Yeah. And I think that that's so powerful. You said, like, this was just our story. This is what we did. But your story is especially for this audience who are parents, matters. This is important. Your story is so empowering. And if, a listener, just one can follow along what you did, and then one parent can stay home and be with their children, and that's their source of happiness, and that changes that child's life. That's a game changer. And so I think what you're doing is incredibly important. I'm so glad that you have film along with the book, because the book is incredible. Like, I'm a huge reader, and I read it in like 2 days, and it was fabulous. And I learned so much more from it. And I've been studying the fire movement for over a year now. And so, yes, like, I'm just so excited that this is coming, and I'm so grateful that you're putting this out into the world, and it's coming soon. But if there was any huge takeaway that you want our listeners to walk away with from this talk, what would that be?
First of all, thank you for all those nice, kind words. I appreciate that very much.
It's the truth.
And the one takeaway, I would say the one takeaway would be, after everything you've already heard in this episode, I would say the one takeaway I would want to leave you with is that there is a very warm, open, and an inviting community that's already taking, these fire steps in their lives, and they get together all over the country. They get together all over the world, and they support each other. And so just know that if you are interested in this in any way, shape, or form, that even if you'd be nervous to talk to close friends or family about this stuff, but you're kind of resonating with it, don't let that stop you, because there is a whole community of people out there. There are friends waiting to accept you with open arms, and they're all over the world. They're all over the internet, and it's very easy and accessible to find that support. And that's I think that's the power of the fire movement, the fire community, and why we're able to give it a name, because otherwise it's just sort of like a formula,
Yeah. It's personal. It's people. That's why it works.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, I do have some rapid fire questions if you're ready.
We'll see.
Success to me means?
Well, I have a personal mission statement, so I guess I would recite that, which is, I want to be present for those who love me, and I want to live a rich, happy, and fulfilled life, and empower others to do the same.
You're doing it. I believe in.
I believe in happiness. As Mr. Money Mustache says, happiness is the only logical pursuit.
I'm grateful for.
Oh, I'm grateful for the support that my family has given me, and the fans of this project and the fire community at large. I'm grateful for the project that I'm working on right now, the purpose that it has, and I'm very, very grateful for finding it myself.
Yeah. Okay, last one. What is something that you've learned in life that you wish someone would have told you earlier on?
I think that's obvious.
Yeah, a little more years investing, that would have been good.
Yeah, especially in the largest stock market rise in history. Goodness gracious. Yeah, I mean, hands down, the one thing I wish people would have told me, or that I would have learned, is the FIRE framework. I mean, truly and honestly, I don't think there's much more I don't know that of a more empowering thing, because I've personally been able to, even though I'm not financially independent, I've personally been able to sort of sidestep the necessity for money in so many ways, because we've got that part figured out now, and we didn't for a decade of being on our own. And since we've got that figured out, that burden is sort of released. I mean, it's not to say that something couldn't happen, or that we're all, we're 100% good to go. No, we're not. But, we're in such a better place than we were. And it's such a more comfortable place. And so we've both felt, my wife and I have both felt so much more empowered to just be more focused on what brings us happiness and what we want to spend our precious, precious time doing. And that's what I wish I would have learned is just, if I had been given that early on, just imagine, and so many others. That's the other thing I think about all the time. Right. Is think about all the ambitious, smart, intelligent, amazing, caring people out there who are just trapped in this rat race. What if we liberate them alone, the people that are like ready to do this tomorrow, that are already, let's say, high earners, right? Who can absolutely do this with huge effects immediately. Imagine if you free them up, what happens? Like, how does society get better? How is your community improved locally? And then all the way down through the middle class, I mean, in the lower class area, it is going to be difficult. It takes so much money to live. Mm-hmm. Some people are only earning enough to live. And I still think those people would benefit from learning about the FIRE framework, because it gives you a goal to set and a way to maybe start thinking about how you might be able to increase your income and work on that. And there's a lot of people in the FIRE movement talking about that as well. I've got a good friend, Grant, who just came out with a book called Financial Freedom. And he talks a lot about how to increase your income in all different ways, whether it's getting a raise at work, whether it's starting a side hustle, all the types of things. And so, it's sort of in some regard, FIRE is sort of, it's got something for everyone, but even in the middle class, I mean, in that sort of that earning level or whatever, it's like it might happen a little bit slower, right? It might not be as impactful, but it's still just as important. And once again, that freedom that you can feel immediately, or at least pretty quickly, depending on how fast that can happen for you, is very, very valuable, because I want to see a world where people are spending more time making decisions out of passion or inspiration instead of fear.
Right. I mean, isn't that the point? Isn't that why we're here? To, create the fullest expression of ourselves. And that doesn't really happen when you're, slaving for someone else.
Exactly. Well, and I think the thing is like slaving for someone else, working to enrich others is a good thing, unless it's not, unless it's not for any, like if it's not for the greater good, if it's not for a greater benefit. I think one of the ways that you'll find happiness, in a very obvious, concrete, and easy way, like the thing that matters most in life is probably to serve others. Is probably to, you're going to get more happiness out of helping other people than you are to help yourself. But when you're struggling to help yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have the space to help others. And so
Yes.
I think that's where, it's, you hear about FIRE, and the one thing that I think the media gets wrong, and the article after article about meet a couple who is retired in their 30s after doing X. What that's missing is what this is really all about, and I'm hoping that this film can start to tap into that. We definitely touch on it in the film. We kind of leave you with it. And that's where I hope the conversation can grow, is how do we use this framework to enrich people's lives in a way that's completely different than what they think is going to happen? It's all a Trojan horse, so to speak, of, hey, you can get rich and retire early. It's like, ooh, and that's a great hook. It's one of the best hooks I've ever heard in my life when it comes to a movement, right? But
absolutely,
it's a Trojan horse for something much greater. So
yeah, and I think it comes back to intentional living, like what you're doing now with everything, like you said.
Yeah. And if we can spread this message, like you said, you touched on it, this is huge, that second generation FI, right? It's being able to teach that to your kids, that, providing financial literacy to my child has now become like, I just realized that that's going to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest gift I can give her. Other than just raising her right, of course, but that's like sort of table stakes, right?
Right.
You go above and beyond. Well, knowing that she's going to have this framework readily available, she won't have to, her answers in your quick fire would be much different, which would, at least the one of, what do you wish you had known? And I think that's great.
Yeah. Well, and everyone who watches the documentary and reads the book is going to have that gift as well. So you are changing lives.
Well, thank you for saying that.
So how can our listeners find out more about you? Where can they find you online?
Yeah. So on our website, playingwithfire.co, you can find all of the things that we're working on. We are on Facebook at Playing with Fire. We are on Twitter and Instagram at PlayWithFireCO. And yeah, come join us on this fun journey. We're going to have a fun year.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. And I can't wait to support you guys when you come to Atlanta. Yeah. Thank you so much, Scott. This was amazing.
Thanks, Liz.
This is the Motherhood Unstressed podcast, and I'm your host, Liz Carlisle. I just wanted to say thank you so much for tuning in. You guys mean everything to me. This is why I do the work that I do. It's for you, the listener, and I'm just so grateful that you're allowing me into your headspace on your dog walk or your commute or whatever you may be doing. And let me know what you're doing. Screenshot the show and share it to your stories and tag me at Motherhood Unstressed. Share the episode with a friend, and if you haven't already, please leave us a 5-star review. One of my big goals this month is to get us to 100 reviews, so you could be part of that movement. Until next time, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. See ya.